Hi everyone, welcome to this video about the Velomobile. I will try to define a Velomobile for you guys. In the picture you can already see several types. I will talk about the environmental benefits, the aerodynamics, which is a very important aspect of a Velomobile, legislation, especially in Belgium where I live, the downsides, the upsides, and finally some models and manufacturers. For those who are unfamiliar with the subject, a velomobile is basically a faired recumbent. You cycle in the recumbent position and it also has an aerodynamic fairing. Do not confuse a velomobile with a streamliner, which has two wheels and is mainly used to break land speed records or for very fast racing. A velomobile has 3 or 4 wheels. Most models have 3 wheels, so 2 wheels at the front for steering and 1 wheel at the back. I ride the Quattro Velo, which is the only model on the market so far on 4 wheels. Typical for the Velomobile is its excellent aerodynamics. So it has an aerodynamic advantage over other bicycles, tricycles and recumbents. And it's a human-powered vehicle, so all the energy comes from your muscles and not from an engine. Now, there is some debate about putting electric assist in a velomobile, but let's just say in general that if most of the power comes from the human inside, it's a velomobile. To clarify, it's also a little bit more than just a tricycle with a shell. There are some velomobiles which are in fact tricycles with a shell on top, but most modern velomobiles are one structure. That means that the outside shell is the velomobile, not just a fairing around an existing trike. So it's a green way of getting around, traveling and going to work, so just like the bicycle. It's kind of like between a car and a bicycle. For me, for example, I do some small shopping in it. I go to work every day in it, and I've ridden it for about 5,000 kilometers since I bought mine last year. And I love bicycles, and most of you probably do, and they're great. They're absolutely fantastic, but there are a few problems with it. So when you ride in the rain, then you get wet. So even a short rain shower can ruin your clothes. Also, your hands and feet can get really cold and it's kind of hard to keep warm on a bicycle. Slippery surfaces, in the case of ice on the road or gravel in corners, you risk falling. Luggage capacity, bicycle usually doesn't have much luggage capacity. There are a few solutions for that though. And finally, long distances. So most people don't want to cycle more than 10 kilometers to their job without electric assist. So we might think of the electric assisted bicycle, which is really gaining an immense popularity here in Belgium, where I live, but that only solves the long distances. On an electric bicycle, it's also it's a lot easier to cycle, for example, let's say 15 or 20 kilometers, but it does not solve the fact that you're still exposed to the rain and the cold. So here comes the Velomobile, which solves the problems that the bicycle has. It should not be seen as a total replacement entirely for the bicycle, but it's a good alternative for the bicycle in winter months and also a good alternative for the car if you're not carrying any passengers. And of course, just like the bicycle, there's no air pollution, no carbon dioxide, no CO2 emissions, it's all clean. No sound pollution either, so it does not make more sound than a bicycle. And of course, there are no traffic jams, as you can also use the bike roads, which is awesome. And finally, I want to add one more thing. What people tend to overlook when they think about cars is that cars are very inefficient. So if you know that in rush hour, the average car contains 1.1 people, so let's say only one person per car, you are using a ton and a half kilograms, 1,500 kilograms of aluminium and steel just to transport one person, which is extremely inefficient because that weight has to be accelerated and decelerated constantly when in traffic. A bicycle does the same thing with about 10 kilograms and a velomobile does it with 20 up to 35 kilograms, which is about 20 times as efficient as a car. I brought to you a little story about aerodynamics. So the year is 1989. And here we see pictures of the last stage of the most exciting Tour de France in history. On the left-hand side, we see Laurent Fignon, who is wearing the yellow leadership jersey on the last day. And on the right hand side we see the American, Greg LeMond. Back then the Tour de France also finished in Paris on the Champs-Élysées, but it wasn't a sprint finish as it is now, but it was a 25 kilometers time trial. And Laurent Fignon had more than a minute to spare, so everybody was quite sure that he was going to win the Tour de France. So what could go wrong, right? Greg LeMond, however, who was second in the ranking, he paid a little bit more attention to aerodynamics. And as you can see on the photograph on the right, he was wearing a helmet, an aerodynamic helmet, while Fignon was still waving his hair about, old school. Also, and more importantly, Greg LeMond had put aero bars on his bike, as you can see, so his elbows could stay really close together, reducing his frontal area and lowering the aerodynamic resistance. All this while Fignon is still riding with his arms wide open. And guess what? Guess what? The impossible happens. Greg LeMond surpasses Fignon and he wins the Tour de France with about 8 seconds to spare. He cannot believe it. Laurent Fignon can't believe it either, and he collapses to the ground of exhaustion and disappointment. So after 21 days of racing, that time trial decided that Greg LeMond was the winner, with the closest difference in Tour de France history. So that's quite amazing, and the question is, how did he do it? So what made the difference here? It lies in the aerodynamics. Let's take a look at which kinds of resistance a regular road race rider has to overcome to move his bike forward. So what are the forces keeping him back? The smallest fragment here, the light red part, is the friction caused by your chain and jockey wheels. Of course, a well-oiled chain will cause less friction than a squeaky worn-out one, but on average this makes up only 2% of the total resistance a road racer faces. So rolling resistance is also quite low, as an upright race bike usually has two thin, smoothly running tires. They make up about 5% of total. And then the blue part is kinetic energy, which is the slight acceleration there is in each pedal stroke, even when you're riding at a pretty steady pace. So that's 7%. But let's take a look at the larger picture. 86%, the dark red color, 86% of all the resistance a rider faces is air resistance. So this is the force that holds a rider back the most. So thinking about how to reduce air resistance is important if you want to go faster for the same power output. Let's see. Aerodynamics is mostly influenced by speed. As the speed goes up, the air resistance grows exponentially, right? So aerodynamics become most important when cycling at high speed. At low speeds, aerodynamics don't matter all that much. So an open jacket at 10 kilometers an hour will not slow you down all that much. And to go from 20 kilometers an hour to 25 kilometers an hour, frankly, doesn't take a lot of power. However, if you want to go from 40 to 45 kilometers an hour, you need a massive amount of extra power. When you are moving forward, you basically push the air together in front of you. So you create a high pressure in front of you and you create a kind of a vacuum, a low pressure behind you. So the air has to go around you or your vehicle to move from the high pressure area in front of you to the low pressure area you're leaving behind. So this is the air resistance that we're talking about. And if you can make your frontal area smaller, which pro cyclists do by hunching over their steering wheel, or if you can let the air run smoothly over an aerodynamic shape, like the teardrop shape of the Velomobile that you can see at the top of the video, the air resistance drops accordingly. So I've pulled some figures from the Specialized Wind Tunnel YouTube section, and these are some things concerning an upright race bicycle they have tested in their wind tunnel. So for example, they compared a standard racing frame to an aerodynamic racing frame with like teardrop shaped tubes, and on 40 kilometers that is 59 seconds faster, which is amazing, right? They checked the advantage that deep section wheels give you. For example, I ride 6 centimeters deep section wheels on my racing bikes, and that's a difference of 34 seconds. If you put your bottle cage on the down tube instead of on the seat tube, then you have another 25 seconds. So Racing number, this is one of my favorite one. If you pin your racing number with 4 safety pins and it flaps about a little bit in the wind, compared to putting your racing number on with 8 safety pins, that saves you 9 seconds. I mean, the 8 safety pins is faster. I mean, you don't have any wind flowing under it. 9 seconds does not seem all that much, but that's the difference between Greg LeMond and Laurent Fignon in the Tour of '89. So yeah. If you switch from regular handlebars to aero bars, like in time trial, that's 1 minute and 40 seconds because you really keep your elbows close together. If you go for a tight-fitting racing shirt, that could also save you 45 seconds. If you go to a aerodynamic helmet, you can save 16 seconds, which is still quite a bit. And jackets in winter, if you go to a tight fitting jacket, that can save you 1 minute and 23 seconds, right? And finally, this has been much debated, but hairy legs compared to shaven legs, well, shaving your legs actually does give you an advantage. According to the wind tunnel test, 50 up to 82 seconds if you shave your legs. So you win about 50 to 82 seconds depending on how hairy you are. So there you go, a reason to shave your legs if you're on a racing bicycle. So let's take a look at the Velomobile at top though. So you can see that teardrop shape. That teardrop shape does everything that you can see on the video and more, right? So this is an overview of all small things that can make a regular road racer faster, but here's the thing. Even with all these aerodynamic changes applied, a good Velomobile will still be 5 kilometers an hour faster. And you can ride them in jeans, so you don't have to shave your legs, finally. And then let's talk a little bit about legislation. You can see the Dutch text at the bottom, which comes directly from our traffic rulebook. A Velomobile is technically what we call in Belgium an rijwiel, or in English we would say a human-powered vehicle with 3 or 4 wheels that doesn't have an engine assist, or if it cuts off after 25 kilometers an hour, and it's narrower than 1 meter. In Belgium, this means that you don't need any insurance, license plate, or helmet. Although I might recommend that last one if you're riding an open Velomobile. Also, this means that, and most people don't know this, that you can ride it both on the road as on the bike lane. In other countries, like the Netherlands and Germany, similar laws apply, but do check the laws in your country to be sure. There are, of course, a few downsides to the Velomobile. So firstly, it's expensive to buy. The prices sometimes scare people off. So you can get a new Velomobile for about 7,000 or sometimes, if you want to go crazy, like 10,000 euros. So a lot of people immediately think, well, that's car money. So I could buy a small car for that money, which is true. But what most people tend to overlook is that the money you spend on purchasing your car is only 1/3 of all the money you'll spend on that car in total, if you count maintenance, parking tickets, insurance, etc. So people are psychologically very sensitive to paying a large amount of money at once, while putting 100 euros in their petrol tank every 10 days and paying a couple of €1,000 on taxes and insurance every year seemed like an easier pill to swallow. With the Velomobile, however, the purchase cost is basically it. So even maintenance is so low because your chain is protected from dust, rain and dirt, and it doesn't even really wear out. Another downside is the turning circle. Depending a little bit on the model and on the width of your front wheels, turning circles are quite wide. So if you want to make a U-turn in a street, you might have to do it in 3 or 4 turns, like a car. So you have to get used to that and get a little bit handy at it. And the last one is that it's quite warm. Personally, when it's more than 20 degrees Celsius outside, I don't like using the Velomobile all that much. And then if it stays dry all day, I ride my regular upright cyclocross bike. It gets quite warm, which is great in winter, but not so great in summer. And then let's take a look at the upsides, right? The reasons for it being an awesome invention. So as we've said, it's much faster than an upright race bike with the same wattage on the pedals. It can replace a car without the costs of fuel, taxes, insurance, maintenance, parking, speed tickets. Of course, if you don't have room for 5 people, but for example, in my case, in my household, we went from 2 cars to 1 car in my Velomobile. And then the main advantage is weather protection. So I was sick and tired of always riding my racing bike in winter months, always getting my hands frozen and wearing 5 layers of clothes trying to stay warm. But with the Velomobile, you're always warm and dry. So even at -5 degrees Celsius, then I do not wear a coat, just a sweater. And as soon as it hits 5 degrees Celsius and up, I just ride in my t-shirt actually. So for example, in my Quattro Velo, it could be very rainy and I'd still remain completely dry. It's also very comfortable. Most people don't realize this, but it has the feeling of lying in your couch. It's very relaxed, easy on your joints and on your muscles. It's also easy to park. I mean, it's a little bit more difficult than a bicycle, but a lot easier than a car, right? You can basically park it anywhere, even on the sidewalk. And finally, it's fun. It's still a very special vehicle. People are always waving at me, taking pictures and asking questions. It's fun to ride. It's something very, very different. It's really cool. Now, we'll go over some models and manufacturers real quick. So Velomobile.nl's kind of the biggest one. They've produced a Quest for about 10, 15 years, I think, and they've produced in total like I think 1,000 of them. So that's quite big. The Strada, the Quattro Velo, which I ride. Then Sinrin Driver produced the Mango, and now they have this new one called the Hilgo, which I haven't tested yet. I really want to. IntercityBike.nl produces the DF and the DF XL, which is kind of my favorite. So it's a really fast, really comfortable trike. Then Katanga now produces the Wow, which was originally like a Flemish invention from Ghent, but now they're being produced in the Czech Republic. Cool Velomobile as well. Then in Australia, where school kids kind of race Velomobiles on tracks against each other, which is really nice. They produce the Roto Velo. In Poland, they have the cab bike. The Netherlands has the Elevator, also like the original aluminium one. There's a new one being produced right now, made by Daniel Fenn. It's called the Alpha 7, which should be pretty fast. I haven't ridden it yet, which will be produced in Romania. Then Flevo Bike produces the Orca, which is a Velomobile which is easier to get into, and also usually is a little bit heavier and has electric assist. Räderwerk in Germany produces the Milan, a fast one. And well, also there are the French, which I haven't listed here. I mean, they produce the Mulsanne and the Le Mans. And there are a few more like Base producing the Leba, the old school Latra, etc. But so yeah, these are the main ones. Well, thank you for watching. I hope you thought it was informative, and feel free to like and subscribe.